I'm Beth O'Shea. I've been a member of Westminster for 70 years. That feels like a very long time. And I went to Sunday school here, and I went to youth group here, and I grew up in the church.
My name is Frank Wade, and I grew up at Westminster my entire life. I was baptized here in 1950, so I'm exactly a year older than Beth. So we've been here our entire lives. And I would say, I think I can speak for Beth, and I would say growing up at Westminster, the Sunday school teachers we had, the role models we had, have greatly shaped and influenced our lives and have played a large part in some of our life decisions.
Definitely. I say the Lord's Prayer every night, which I memorized in Sunday school class with Mrs. Patrick. And when I am really praying hard, I lift up my eyes to the hills, which we learned with Miss Diefendorf. So that's kind of where I am as far as my church experience goes.
And I think anyone that grew up in Beth and I's era would always remember Brenda Patrick. She taught third grade Sunday school for probably 25 years, and there's not a time that I do not say the 23rd Psalm that I don't think of her, because we had to memorize it. And she did it in such a non-threatening way, in such a loving way. You wanted to please her. So I know the 23rd Psalm by heart because of Miss Patrick, and I think of her every time I say that.
I really love teaching kindergarten Sunday school. We call it godly play because the children are so honest and open and beginning their faith journey, and it's just a joy to watch them grow and mature in the church as they continue through youth and confirmation and etc. on to Youth Sunday.
Well, I'm going to have to agree with Beth. I think one of the most meaningful experiences I've had is teaching 4-year-old Sunday school. I've taught with the same team. Well, Pam Coleman and I have taught together for 35 years, and we've had a team together for probably 10 or 12. But the one thing I think about is the wonderful Sunday school teachers I had here and how important and meaningful they were in my life. And that has kind of spurred me on to teach. And plus, like Beth said, they're just so refreshing and they're so much fun, and I just really enjoy it. The other event, Beth and I have both been elders, but the other event I think would be on the pastor nominating committee that brought Donovan to Westminster. That was a very spiritual experience for us.
Yes, I would like to share how meaningful it is to me to serve communion. I love serving communion. I love saying, this is the bread of life, the cup of salvation, thanks be to God with people. It just means the world. And another piece of that is that while I was home sick and in recuperation from my cancer experience, the elders came to my house and served communion, and it was just lovely. It was a perfect way to refresh my life in the church.
I think you can tell Beth and I grew up in the same generation at this church, because one of my fondest memories is my first communion at Westminster. When Beth and I were growing up here, you could not take communion until you were 12 years old, until you joined the church. So every Sunday you see the elements pass you by. And I believe, Beth, we joined the church on Palm Sunday, and then we had church service afterwards. And I can remember where I was sitting with my mother when I took that first communion.
My kids both came to Sunday school with me. I taught their Sunday school classes also, which was fun because then I got to know their other church friends. My son was an active member in the youth groups and in choir. He was playing Jesus, and he sang, "Let This Cup Pass Away." And that was unbelievable that he could do that, and he had an opportunity to do that at Westminster. My daughter became a youth leader. We have a house in Montreat, and she went to clubs in Montreat, and then she worked in Montreat, but she learned how to deal with young people through working here as I guess she was like the chairman of her youth group or something. There was a gap in the youth ministry, and she planned she worked with another kid, to plan a trip to Chicago to do mission work, and that was unbelievable that she was able to have that experience through church. It was great training for her.
Well, both my boys grew up in the church as well. They attended Sunday school. That was not an option in our house. They attended Sunday school and went to church. And my older son was in the youth choir. And what struck me is when he went off to college, where he went to college was a very large school, and he knew no one there. And the first Sunday he was in college, he went to the Presbyterian youth ministry home to meet other fellow Presbyterians. And I thought that said a lot for his upbringing here. And he said that he was so surprised when he went to church at the Presbyterian church where he was in Clemson, South Carolina, and that when they announced it Senior Sunday, where the students were going, when they said so many students were going to South Carolina, they booed. And he said, "Can you imagine Westminster booing?" And so I thought that was cute. So they both grew up here and really had a wonderful time here. And I think one thing that they'll always treasure and remember our Christmas Eve services. And they're now living in different cities from us, but when they come home for Christmas, they always enjoy coming to the Christmas Eve service.
I love the outreach that Westminster is doing in Nashville. We are reaching out to all socioeconomic levels, and I think that makes a huge difference in who we are. I think it stands out. Also, I like the in-reach a lot. I like the intergenerational activities that we are doing, and I think we need to continue.
I think Donovan, he challenges us to go out and do good works within the community. I think Beth doing the Joy in Learning has been a huge asset to the church. It's connected, like Beth was talking about, intergenerational. I think Joy in Learning has been a huge aspect of that. And also of connecting us with like Nations Ministry Center through the work they do in Joy in Learning with Nations Ministry Center and other organizations. So my hat's off to Beth Drake for coming up with the Joy in Learning. It's been a big outreach for our church.
Yes, it's been awesome. Okay, so when I was a child, my dad was an elder. First he was a deacon and then he was an elder. And we went together always early in the morning, like 5 a.m. or something, to the sunrise service that Westminster did at the steeplechase. And it was just so fun. I remember the eggs, the bacon cooking, the smell of the bacon and the eggs, and of course it was not all about eating, but I was hungry by the time the sun rose. So anyhow, it was cooked over an open fire, and it was just really fun. That was a great memory for me. Something that I did with my father.
About when we were in youth group here at Westminster, and West End used to be a home of just beautiful mansions, and there was one here. Westminster was built in front of the Gray home, and that was the name of the family, the Gray family. They had like 9 children. They had this beautiful home, and that's where we had our Sunday school classes. And if you look at our class pictures that were taken in that genre that are on the history wall, we're standing on the steps of the Gray house. But we had youth group there, and we had this piano in there, and we were in youth group in the late 60s, and we talked our youth director into letting us paint the piano all these different psychedelic colors. And we to this day cannot believe he let us do that, but he did, didn't he?
Yeah, and so we did, and it was beautiful by the time we were done with it. It sparkled in the dark.
Yeah, it was. Remember, this was the 60s. But it was just a great experience growing up here. It's been one of the defining moments of my life growing up in this church. It really shaped who we are.
Definitely. I was never a great singer. Let me preface this by saying that, but I do remember when we were in 7th and 8th grade Sunday school, we sang, "Oh, come, 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 come to the church in the wildwood. Oh, come to the church in the vale.
No quite is so dear to my childhood as the little brown church in the vale. You can see why we're not in the choir.